Hey everybody, it is Safi and Marco. Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. And it is just Marco here once again. This has been a weird weekend. As you guys can recall, I was supposed to do like a special video that was going to be a Patreon exclusive. And unfortunately, I just wasn't able to do that this weekend. Things just didn't work out, so I'm aiming to do it tomorrow. Yeah, I'm going to do it tomorrow possibly, and then I'm going to push tomorrow's video to Wednesday. Excuse me, sorry. And so I wanted to do something just random. Like I didn't want to, binge watch Mentalist or binge watch Cape Fear and do all that. So I wanted to find something that would be really fun to review. And thankfully, there are a lot of indie movies out there that are very fun to review. Okay, particularly movies that are made by the Polonias or Mark Polonia. You guys know that he made that dummy movie, the slappy ripoff about the middle-aged guys going to a high school reunion, and then they stay at like an Airbnb and there's no reunion, and then they get killed by a human-sized dummy, and God, that movie was so bad. Thankfully, this movie is just as bad. Okay, this movie is called You're All Doomed. Right off the bat, I looked at this title because I found this movie called Shocktopus, and I was going to review that, but then I found this movie because I was trying to find like really, really low budget movies. Like I want to review these really, really low budget movies, and so I found this instead. And right off the bat, the title is totally ripping off Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th, as you guys can remember, there is an iconic line in that movie: "You're all doomed, doomed," from Crazy Ralph. That's a line that is said in like the first 2 or 3 movies, I think. And then they just stopped doing it in the series. So right off the bat, I was like, oh, wait a second. These guys, they made this Friday the 13th ripoff. And then they did a Slappy ripoff. And then I looked at the poster. The poster is hilarious because you can tell this is AI generated. There's a hooded killer in like a black hoodie, and he's got black gloves and a kitchen knife. And there is nobody in the entire movie who ever has a kitchen knife or black gloves or, well, maybe black gloves, but never any hoodie. There's no black hoodie at all. So right off the bat, this is false advertising, just like the Dummy movie, where on the Dummy poster they had this dummy clearly AI generated, and then in the movie the dummy looks completely different. And by the way, I think it's hilarious because like even though I think AI is disgusting, people who use it are disgusting, I feel like you could put a picture of something that you want AI to utilize in the poster, and they will utilize it. So why wouldn't the person doing this, why wouldn't they just take a picture of the killer and then give that to AI and get like an actual poster? And then the other thing is that we see this really, really shitty little picture of a tent with like a guy and a girl, and they're clearly like having sex, and it's their silhouettes. That's another thing that's funny because that's never in the movie either. There is never a couple having sex in a tent. And in fact, this movie doesn't even take place at a summer camp. Like, there's not even any summer camp storyline. Like, it's at the area around a summer camp where a summer camp used to be, but there are never any campers. And so here's another thing. And I think that the summary for this movie is AI generated too. This is the summary for this Friday the 13th ripoff. A disfigured killer escapes from an asylum and returns to Camp Hollow. And then there's a comma, which there doesn't need to be a comma there at all, where unsuspecting campers, guys, campers. These people in this movie are not campers. You know what the plot is? The plot is, instead of like some hot, fake teenagers, played by adults, who are at a summer camp, this story is a group of middle-aged people go to a former summer camp so that they can clean it up, and then the camp will be demolished and turned into a shopping center or something. That's the actual plot. There are no campers in this movie. There is no camp going on. And then it says they face a terrifying weekend, which I think that's another hilarious thing too, because one of the funny things is that they never overtly say what day it is, for obvious reasons. I mean, they basically, plagiarized several things, and they wouldn't want to, take it that far over the edge. So they never say that it's Friday the 13th. However, by saying that they face a terrifying weekend, what can we infer, guys? We can infer that they arrive at the camp on Friday. Because it's a weekend. So in order to experience the full weekend, you got to get there on Friday. So once again, like, all the signs pointed towards this being a complete piece of trash and being a total Friday the 13th ripoff. And there are some other things too, but I think that's hilarious. And then it says, the vengeful maniac unleashes fiery carnage in the woods. That's another actually hilarious mislead, and another thing that is complete false advertising. There is never any chase in the forest, in the woods. There is never any kill that takes place in the forest or woods. So that is another complete falsity. There might be there's a chase that takes place like on the outskirts of the woods, but there's never anybody that goes into the woods and gets killed. And then fiery carnage. I don't know. I see, that sounds so AI generated. And then there's another summary, which again affirms that this is a camp where unsuspecting campers get killed on a weekend. And this is weird too, because, and I never even saw this. See, this review is going to be pretty long, guys, so buckle in. This is a fun review. I love these types of reviews because there's just so much. I mean, this is like a gold mine. This movie is a gold mine of slop and trash. They find their weekend of fun twisted into a nightmare of fire. Where is the fire? There's never any fire. There's fire in the past. And to be honest, like, if I was a scriptwriter, which I would never write this movie, I mean, I would love to do a Friday the 13th, even a Friday the 13th, like, knockoff type of thing. But if I was writing it, like, so this is part of the story of the killer. Crispy. In the past, this guy got burned alive in a cabin, and he became horribly disfigured and became known as Crispy. So it would seem kind of like poetic if they had more of a budget and if they were able to accomplish this, if there was a fire at some point in the movie where the characters have to fight him and there's a fire and maybe he gets trapped in the fire. That would have felt natural, but there's never any fire. So I don't know why there's this mention of fire. And so, yeah, so getting into the movie. So those summaries were AI generated, the poster was AI generated, and already before you even watch the movie, it's like, this is AI slop. This is indie slop. And what the constant mystery for me was trying to figure out, like, the people making this movie. You know, when I watched Dummy, it seemed like they just deliberately didn't care. And it seemed like they really did a bad job and didn't care. But with this movie, I was trying to figure out, like, if they do care and, like, they just don't know how to accomplish something better, or if they literally just didn't care. And I'm leaning towards the literally don't care, because this is like one of 3 or 4 movies that they have released this year. And this is what I mean by calling it slop, is that when you're churning out these zero budget movies with no artistic anything, no artistic vision and no merit, in them, it's slop. It's slop because it's just like, it's there for the sake of being there. There's no reason for this movie to exist. This movie, it's like a fart that doesn't go away. Okay, like you've had some beans, and then you have a little scene out of fucking Blazing Saddles, and you just and then there's just the smell stays around before it finally leaves. Like, that's what this movie is. It's a complete piece of crap. That's my shortened summary, but we're gonna get into the whole thing, because this movie is a treat. So get ready, okay? And now I'm at minute 13, just like Friday the 13th. And by the way, guys, I just wanted to mention, I think that slop can apply to any budget. So I'm not just picking on this movie because the people didn't have any money and they didn't write a script to account for that. And, I'm, like there's a new series coming out. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like a Friday the 13th prequel series, and it doesn't look very good, so that could be slop as well. And then Supergirl was slop for sure, and Spider-Man was slop. So slop can apply to any movie of any budget. Okay, so right off the bat, this movie has like a triple or quadruple opening, opening scene. There's an opening with a POV shot in the dark in the forest, and something that really breaks the submersion is that the camera light is on. And I guess that was a POV shot of the killer, but there is never any explanation or any purpose for that opening shot. And to be honest, they could have just cut it from the movie. They didn't have to have that shot there at all. And then they show what looks to be like a flashback And, we see a POV shot of this guy, and then the cabin lights on fire. And there's this really hilarious CGI fire. And there's a CGI guy covered in fire, and he walks through it. And see, this is the part where I think this movie could also be plagiarizing The Burning. Now, I've never seen the movie The Burning. I've heard that it's pretty good. Safi and I could review it this year if you guys would like, because I'm always open to seeing good horror movies. But that movie centers around like a killer who gets burned alive and then he gets disfigured. So maybe this is also ripping off that. So then we see, right off the bat, with this Friday the 13th ripoff, they have a campfire scene, which of course, most of the good Friday the 13th movies, they start off with a campfire scene. And you have... So a lot of this review is going to be explaining some of the weird type of filmmaking choices that they made and how bad they were in this movie. So they had these shots of stock footage of like these random people sitting at a fire. And I was like, oh shit, like they actually got like 10 people to be in the movie instead of like 4 people and maybe like a bread and bologna or something. Like they actually got like 10 people who probably aren't even going to be major characters. And then they cut from that footage to footage of this one guy talking, and there is a fake fire light going on, because they can't have a real fire, probably because of insurance. I don't know. But it was pretty ballless, okay? So anyways, that was just really jarring. Like, they would cut to these stock footage shots of, like, all these people with a real fire, and then they would cut to these clearly fake shots of this guy in close-up, very close up, which that's one of the biggest issues I have with this movie, was that there was way too many close-ups. Like, just straight up, like, it was suffocating. It was kind of like, and I hate to compare it to an actual movie, but like, what was that movie, Good Time, with Robert Pattinson? Like where it was just like a bunch of close-ups and just constant shaky camera and cutting and cutting. That's what this movie was like. There was way too many close-ups, and I think, I'm not of the school, because there are a lot of people who, they say that, like, you should only use close-ups once in a while, and, don't use them, like, frequently. No, I'm not of that strict opinion, but the fact is that in this movie, they overdo it. They really overdid it, and it's just, it gets so frustrating, because it's ugly. It's like, I want to see a full body. I want to see half upper body and head. And there's also a weird thing with height, where a lot of the shots are shot like, and this is something really weird to explain, because I never thought this would happen ever in a movie. So normally, like, movie shots, they're shot at like an equal level to people, they're like at a shoulder level. Well, in this movie, I hesitate to call it a movie, there are a lot of shots that are like at waist length. So like the camera is just pointing straight ahead, and it's like a little person is behind the camera. It's like Bagel Boss. The Bagel Boss is behind the camera. You guys remember Bagel Boss? Because he's dead. Okay, so that was really weird for me. Okay, so this guy at the fake campfire, he tells the legend of Crispy. And then also, we get these shots of stock footage throughout this legend, which I thought that was really bad because, like, the whole point of this is that, it's supposed to be mysterious. We don't need to see a stock footage video of, like, surgeons, because he's talking about how, Crispy got, his face worked on, and, he went to the hospital. We don't need the stock footage. And yet they just play it over and over and over again throughout this legend, which completely just ruins the whole point of it. And that's stuff like that is like why I was like thinking that, like, okay, maybe these people genuinely want to make a good movie and they just don't understand. And I mean, I'm not like an authority on these types of things. I'm not claiming that I'm some sort of like a superior, whatever, but it's coming from a place of like understanding. Like this is why that works, is because the whole time you're watching somebody talking and you're not seeing things yet. Because it's a legend. It's supposed to be it's a campfire story. It might not even be real. That's the whole fucking point. Oh yeah, so then they get scared by Crazy Ralph, who is Frank in this movie. But let's just be honest, he's Crazy Ralph. He even has a Carhartt hat on, which I thought was hilarious. And he says, "You're all doomed." Which is like, every time Crazy Ralph says you're all doomed, you guys should take a shot. Because you're going to die if you do that, okay? You're going to be doomed. And something else I think is funny? So remember how I said you're a dummy if you watch the movie Dummy? Which somebody actually wrote recently. They wrote, if you still watch the movie Dummy after hearing this review, then you're a dummy. And, well, okay, here's a good one. If you watch this movie, then you're doomed. Okay, you're doomed for boredom. And you're doomed for misery. I mean, oh God, there's just so much. Like, jeez. I love reviewing shit like this. Like, I could review this stuff like 7 days of the week. I mean, because there's actually stuff to talk about. And, it's more entertaining to talk about than something big budget that's like disappointing, because they really don't have excuses. These people with millions of dollars, the people who made this movie, they do have some excuses. And like, I'm not going to go as hard as I would like if they had millions of dollars. But still, that's not an excuse either. And that's an excuse that I hear constantly within like the indie film industry. I'd like to do this idea, but I just don't have the budget for it. I can't do that because it's not a budget. I need the budget, and I need more money for it. And it's like, come on, you can figure shit out. Just figure it out. Like, I'm running into several. I mean, when you write a script, you run into issues, and you try to figure out how to make something doable. But like, budget isn't the end all be all. The real end all be all to a movie being good is creativity. Creativity and just, like using your brain. to solve problems. And then also actually knowing what you're doing too. You have to know what makes a Friday the 13th movie work. Okay, let's just be honest. Okay, so after all that, oh yeah, and by the way, this whole campfire scene, it is a complete waste of time. These characters, they're never brought up again. Because they didn't even exist to begin with. I bet all the people in the stock footage, they don't even know that they're in this movie. Because it's stock footage. They're not going to know unless it was paid for. But even then, I don't think that they would know. So that's pretty hilarious, And so then we get an AI-generated opening credits. The music doesn't match the movie. There's a lot of strange music in this movie. There's actually a scene later on in the movie where all of a sudden there's like a hip-hop song playing and there's like a killer beat. And then we see Jason Voorhees, and he's standing in the middle of nowhere just watching Crazy Ralph. And it's like, okay, that was random. The music in this movie, you can tell that they got it from YouTube because none of it fits with anything. None of it's just all some of it fits, but it doesn't fit together. I think that's tricky too. So, that's not something I'm going to be super harsh about. But, that was so random, that whole scene with the hip-hop song. And Jason is standing there, Crispy. They call him Crispy. Okay. So then there's a janitor at a mental hospital. This is where Crispy is, by the way. And apparently there's no guards at the mental hospital. And there's no other people at the mental hospital except for the one janitor. There's literally nobody there. You guys remember Halloween 2 and how there was 3 people walking around the hospital? Well, in this case, there is literally just the one janitor and that's it. He's just, he's cleaning the entire building all by himself, I guess. And he's just, oh, that's good. Good storytelling. So we have this long shot where he goes down this long hallway, and then he cleans one spot, and then he walks downstairs, and then he discovers a body, or he discovers blood. And this is the part where we get another strange filmmaking choice. They show a really close-up shot of blood. And then we see a medium shot of the blood, and then we see a wide medium shot. So that was really unnecessary. It just seemed I guess what they do is they shoot a bunch of shots for coverage, and then I guess they could just use all the shots. That's not really the point. When you're shooting for coverage, you're not supposed to use every single shot. And, that whole thing of seeing the blood and then you see it another angle and then you see it another angle, that was totally nonsensical. So then we see him run back upstairs. There's no panic in his voice at all to call the police, and the line has been cut. And instead of going to find another phone, I guess there's only one phone in the entire mental hospital. And instead of just escaping the building, he runs back downstairs. And then and I'm not even, this is 30 minutes so far. I'm not even 10 minutes into the movie. That's how bad this is. He goes back downstairs to investigate the clearly the murder room. and he finds a dead body, and there's a jump scare, and then all of a sudden the killer is there, and the way that was done, the way that was shot was done horribly. So then guess what we get next, guys? The janitor runs back up the stairs, he runs down a long hallway, and then he runs back up other stairs, and then he runs down another hallway, and then all of a sudden, Crispy teleported and he kills him. And the way that he kills him is so bad. He just stabs him, and they cut to stock footage of blood dripping on a white floor. That is what you call laziness. That was terrible. That whole kill thing. It's like they're trying to disguise the lack of budget in like the worst ways possible. And it comes off as like really, really lazy and really bad. Okay, so then the characters of this movie, we have Jack from The Shining. He is returned. Remember, he was the final guy from Dummy. And he was hilarious in that movie. And then we have Vince Gilligan from Dummy. He has returned as well. And then we have a chick, surprisingly. The guy who made this movie, he was actually able to get a person of the opposite sex to be in the movie. And I guess her character's name is Tanya. She's kind of a slut. So, the character. And then you have like a nerdy guy. And then also the ventriloquist from Dummy is in the movie as well. He's hardly in the movie, and he's still wearing like the same clothes, and he still looks exactly the same. It's like he walked off of the set of Dummy, and then he just walked on here, and he's just the exact same. It's just, these actors, like, there's no difference in these characters that they're playing at all. It's just like it's like they're playing themselves. They're not really playing characters. I guess Tanya, she's playing a character for sure, but like, yeah. Okay, so the whole plot again is that they are staying at this camp for the weekend, I guess, because they have to clean it up so it can get demolished. Which I don't even think they do that, because when they tore down our house, they didn't clean it up at all. So they just left everything inside and, tore it down. Okay, so then this is what I'm talking about with the close-ups. In this whole car scene, it's nothing but close-ups with this white screen background. And again, I think that's because of insurance, because they didn't want to shoot while they're actually driving a car, which just kind of defeats the purpose of seeing, a car scene. Like, unless you're able to actually do it old school, where you show like a projected background, then you might as well just shoot people driving the car for real. Like that whole thing, just too many close-ups, and that continues throughout the whole movie. So then there is an older woman, another woman, surprisingly. There are 3 women in this movie, and that was surprising. This older woman comes to this lodge. The housing lodge is what they call it. That's probably where they stayed to make the movie, too. Let's just be honest. And then she puts groceries down, and then she gets killed. And notably, the movie cuts to the exact same stock footage shot that they used when the janitor in the mental hospital got killed. And then we see a little bit of blood on the floor, but to me that was also like, oh, this was an Airbnb, and they didn't want blood to be anywhere, so they had to do that. And I think that, like the fake blood issue, that's like a legitimate problem with like low budget movies, is that like a lot of places, they do not want fake blood to get anywhere on anything. And it's like, what do you do? You have to, like, there's things you can do. Like, I got for my first movie that I'm still working on, I got a big carpet, and so basically, like, I can get blood all over the carpet, or the rug. It's a rug. And then, so a character gets on the rug, and then there's blood all over by them and on the rug. And it's fine, because it's all on this rug that I got exclusively for this kill. And guess what, guys? I washed the rug, and all the blood came out. All the fake blood came out. So that's pretty hilarious, like, okay. So that older woman gets killed. She never gets mentioned again. There isn't any mention of her being missing or anything. I mean, there is a little bit of a mention where the adults arrive and they see that there's another car there. And, okay, this part is actually pretty hilarious, because it's the only time where they mention this woman's existence. She's never declared missing. She's never declared dead. We never see her body. She is just gone. Okay, so Vince Gilligan and Tanya, they go to the forest to look for the woman who's been killed, as if she would just wander off into the woods. Well, here's the thing. Okay, so you want to look for this person. Well, it's in the middle of winter in this movie, and for some reason, they don't even look at the snow for footprints. Like, that's just basic. Like, if they wanted to look for this woman, like, there would be footprints leading into the forest, right? No footprints. They don't even bother to look for footprints. They just go up to the forest and they yell, and then they turn around and they get scared by the other two guys. And then it's revealed that they never even entered the forest, but they made it seem like they would go in the forest. So maybe that's another thing about insurance. I don't know. But it's just like, oh, we can't do anything. Like, we're making a Friday the 13th movie, but we can't even go in the forest. I mean, this movie should be called, like, Pussy the 13th. Because, this movie, it's like it was made by a bunch of pussies. Okay? And also, by the way, the Jason killer, the Crispy, he is totally a Jason plagiarism, because he is wearing a sack over his head with the one eye hole. And throughout the movie, even though he's supposed to be a burn victim, you can see that his face is just totally normal under the sack, through the eye hole. So that is another major issue. And also just the fact, like, the sack on his head, that is just blatant plagiarism. And then he even grabs a machete to kill people with. And this is the part where the movie it goes from being bad to being complete trash. Because for most of this movie, Jason literally does nothing. Like, in this first day that they arrive, there's like a 5-minute sequence of these characters unpacking and making a ham sandwich, eating carrots. All this food, you can tell, is the food that they eat, like, when the camera's off as well, by the way. And it's not like that's a bad thing. It's just the fact that it's just so blatantly obvious and so, like, bottom of the barrel. Okay, so anyways, after Jason grabs the machete, he then goes to the house to spy, and then he goes back to his hideout and grabs a saw instead. So there was literally no point to that whole sequence other than like, oh look, he's Jason because he has a machete. And now he has a hacksaw instead. Okay, so then Crazy Ralph comes in the house. And by the way, Crazy Ralph literally just wanders in this cabin or this lodge over and over and over and over again. And he says, "You're all doomed." And he says, "You're all doomed" about 4 or 5 times. And so then I would like to say, I think some of these actors read the lines off of a cue card or a teleprompter or something. Because Vince Gilligan, he says, and I'm not kidding here when I say this, guys. Vince Gilligan says, "Are we safe here? Are we safe here?" You know, the line probably is supposed to be, "Are we safe here?" You know, because they're talking about, you know, this crispy killer roaming loose and, you know, not killing anybody until the last 10 minutes. But he says, "Are we safe here?" And that's just mind-blowing, guys. None of the other actors noticed that he got the line that wrong. He didn't even notice. Well, I could kind of believe that. I mean, I've worked with some boomer actors, but like the director didn't notice that. Nobody else, if there is anybody else on the set, they didn't notice that. Blatantly, obviously incorrect line. That sounds stupid. The editor didn't notice that. Like, they didn't just say, "Hey, can we get one more take?" I mean, guys, the editor literally chose to use that take. That means that the editor, I don't know what the editor was doing. Maybe they were whacking off. I don't know. Maybe they were whacking off and then they got jizz all over their hand and they didn't want to touch the keyboard or anything, and then they just let it play. I don't know. I really don't know what happened with the making of this movie. But are we safe here? What the fuck is that? Who would say that? Why did they accept that? That adds to the opinion of like, no, that it's not the fact that they don't know what to do and they want to know what to do. It's that they don't care. Because that was inexcusable, guys. I don't care what budget they have. I don't care if they have $5 and a cheeseburger. Like, that was like a basic error. Okay. So then Tanya takes a shower. And of course, I bet you guys are wondering, well, this is supposed to be a Friday the 13th ripoff, so is there any nudity? Is there any tits and ass? Nope. Wrong. Probably for insurance reasons or some bullshit pussy reason. There's no tits. There's no ass. There's not even any there's not even any man boobs. There's not I mean, you know that's bad. Like, usually in these modern woke horror movies, usually they'll at least have some man boobs and they'll have And they'll have like a guy take his shirt off, and then he takes his pants off, and you see him in his underwear. Not even in this movie. In this movie, there's no tits and ass. The shower sequence, it's so bad because what was the point of that? What was the point? Like, they literally have the camera in the shower for like 5 whole minutes as this woman is showering, and it's just a close-up of her face. And it's like, what was the point? Like, I thought maybe she was going to get killed or something, but no. So then the nerdy guy, he comes in, and she gets surprised, and he's like, "Oh no, I'm sorry. I had to go wee-wee." And instead of being upset, she flashes him, and he literally runs out of the bathroom and runs into a bedroom and hides. Oh, God. I mean, see, that part of the movie, that one little part, I could see that being in a Friday the 13th movie, like with a really nerdy character. But, you know, the fact that, like, these characters are, like, in their 30s or 40s or maybe even older than that, and they're still acting like teenagers, it's just, it's really bad. You know, like, they could have just had, like, middle-aged people play actual teenagers, and it would have been so much better. And so this movie doesn't have one of the basic elements of a good Friday the 13th movie, which is tits and ass. So that is a major failure of this movie. So yeah. Okay, so then it becomes nighttime. And I'm not kidding when I say the killer goes to some random bitch's house, and I'm not kidding, guys. These characters arrive at this summer camp, and instead of just all getting killed off one by one, and it's really scary and suspenseful, the killer decides to go to some random other house in the middle of nowhere that we never see again. We never find out who this character is who gets killed. She's just some random woman who's on a diet and she's trying to exercise. And there is literally a 10-minute sequence of her exercising to an exercise tape while the killer watches from outside. Ugh. I mean, what? What is this movie? Why did they do this? That was what I thought the whole movie. Like, that was the lingering question of, like, why did this movie even need to exist? So then the killer kills her. He saws her neck open, but we don't get to see that. We don't get any cool Tom Savini practical effects. We don't get any scares. We don't get any good music. We get a cutaway shot to a styrofoam head being, its neck being sliced open. And it doesn't bother me that, like, they had to use a styrofoam head, because I've used styrofoam heads. It bothers me that they didn't go to the craft store, okay? They didn't go to Michael's and get flesh tone paint. Like, that's all they had to do. And then paint the neck, and then, oh no, this person's getting their neck sawed. And maybe, too, use some creativity. Maybe you could cut a little hole through the neck wound, and you could put a blood tube there, and you could pump fake blood through the styrofoam neck. Oh, wow. I just used my brain for 1 second, and I came up with a better special effect than whatever the fuck this was. So again, that was random, and that was another close-up too. Too many close-ups in this movie. That was a note that I consistently wrote down. So then the next day, they decide to try to run away. So after we got the 5-minute sequence of them unpacking, I forgot to mention all this other shit. Jack Nicholson, Jack from The Shining, he has sex with Tanya, and they go to work to clean up the cabins for like 5 minutes before going back to the lodge. And then, so we get like a 5-minute sequence of them packing up, and this is like more than like 30 to 40 minutes, I think, into the movie. It's more than halfway through the movie, and there have only been 2 kills. And it's not like they're building to something in a really good way. It's like that this killer is literally just walking around and watching these people for days without doing anything. And without even, like, trying to scare them or anything. So then, Jason, he slashes their tires, and he kills their engine. And the thing that I wondered was, why don't they go to that other house with that other car and try to escape in that one? Ooh, I don't know. Maybe it's too long away. I don't know. But, isn't freedom worth it, Isn't getting away from a serial killer worth running a couple of miles, I guess not, because I'm not kidding this when I say, guys, remember The Simpsons, the shinning, where they all get into the car and they're driving in the mountains, and Marge says, "Did you forget to turn off the stove?" And then Homer's like, "Dope!" And then they go back, and then it says Tuesday. And then she says, "Did you remember to lock the back door?" And then he's like, "Dope!" And then they go back again. And they literally do the same thing here, where the car won't start. And instead of investigating the tires, the engine, they literally just give up, and they go back into the lodge. They take all their luggage back in, and they stay another night. I mean, what was up with that? The killer killed their car and let them stay another night. They stayed another night at this lodge. They thought that they were in mortal danger. And they chose to stay another night at this random lodge in the middle of nowhere. The phone is dead, which means the killer has been in the house. Oh yeah, and then Crazy Ralph comes back in, and he says, "You're all doomed." Wow. That was so necessary. Alright. So they survive yet another night. And at this point, by the way, there is only 15 minutes left in the movie. So at this point, the nerd, he goes outside and he discovers the killer's hideout. He gets killed, and this is probably the worst kill in the movie, or the second worst kill. There is no blood on the machete, because now Jason is using a machete, of course. And he stabs him once in the back, and we do get a nice little close-up of the machete, quote-unquote, going into his back. I thought that was a good one for their budget. But then he starts falling down, and Jason stabs him again, and there's CGI blood that squirts up, and then there's no blood on the machete or even on Jason's hands. So that was WTF. Now, I know that I'm almost an hour in, which, by the way, guys, I'm so glad this isn't going to be a two-part review, because I was kind of scared, like this movie, it really deserves to be talked about. This review might actually end up being longer than the actual movie. So, you guys know how in horror movies you have like a scene where the power gets cut, it's nighttime, and it's really scary, like, oh no, the power's out, it's all dark everywhere. Michael Myers just pops up from behind the couch and stabs Laurie in the arm. That was scary as shit. And then she stabs him with the sewing needles, and that was so scary. And by the way, Halloween was an indie movie, okay? By the way. Well, in this movie, after allowing these people to stay almost a full weekend at this lodge, Jason cuts the power in the middle of the day. He cuts the power in the middle of the day. I mean, that is just a total epic failure. What's the point of cutting the power if you could you can literally just run outside, and then the light from outside is illuminating the house, so you don't even need very much lighting inside? I mean, that is just what you call pure retardation from the killer, his point of view. So then Vince Gilligan, he goes to check the power. And by the way, guys, this is hilarious. The actor playing Vince Gilligan, this is the second time that he has had to go to the basement to check the power after the power's been shut off. And he gets killed. And the way that he gets killed is so egregiously fake, it is shameful. This is the worst kill, possibly the worst kill I've ever seen in a horror movie in my entire life. They cut away to a styrofoam head that is white, and it has no eyes or any facial features. It has nothing but a hat on, and then it's fully white, and it gets stabbed. The styrofoam head gets stabbed. And then in the next scene, Jason has teleported to the first floor, and then somehow, even though Vince Gilligan got killed in the basement, the styrofoam head drops from the ceiling. So that didn't make any sense at all. And then Jack from The Shining, he gets killed. And then the final girl, she does this little chase outside, and then she hits the killer, and then she runs back in the lodge. At this point, I started to get so kind of impatient with this trash that I started like fast forwarding through the movie. So, but at this point, Crazy Ralph is back in the lodge. And there's a twist where Crazy Ralph allows Jason to kill this woman because he is working with Jason. And so then the last shot, or almost the last shot of the movie, is him looking into the camera and saying, "You're all doomed." Wow. God, that was trash. Oh yeah, and remember the long hair guy who just shows up? He's like their boss, and he's supposed to show up on the last day, and he never arrives. He's sitting at his house watching the news, and this is the funniest like wording that I've ever heard of, like, you know, it would just be a clear headline of like murders in the middle of whatever linked to escaped mental patient. Like, that's all it would be, the headline. But instead, the way that this newswoman phrases it is they are investigating this person, linking them to several killings in the past few days. I mean, that is just like, I don't know like who wrote that, but like when you say that somebody is being investigated, usually that type of thing isn't broadcasted all over the news. But number two, usually somebody who's being investigated, it would have to mean that channel is like TMZ or something, because, you know, you don't tell somebody that they're being investigated until they're arrested. Because, you know, they investigate, they find evidence, and then they arrest the suspect. And then at that point, they would say, you know, person arrested in connection to these murders. They should have said that there's like an ongoing manhunt or something. So like even like something as simple as a news coverage is completely fumbled by these people. So then the long hair guy, he starts, and this is weird too, if all these murders happened on his land or whatever, he would be the first person being questioned by the police. The police would be at his house saying, "Sir, we're going to need you to come in to have a little talk." Like, he wouldn't just be allowed to sit around in his house doing nothing. But he starts walking around his house looking for Jason. I don't know why. Like, why did he do that? If he thought that Jason Voorhees was in his house, then why didn't he just run outside of his house and run away? And by the way, I think he checked his phone, and I think the power was cut there too. Or not the power, but the phone was cut. So then he finds the killer in the closet, and Jason kills him, and that is the last shot of the movie. So guys, when I say that this movie is bad, it's really, really bad. You guys will understand why. Because I just spent over an hour laying things out, detail by detail, painstaking detail, and honestly, like, I could have even gotten more anal if I wanted to. This movie is slop. The acting was terrible, the directing was terrible, the music was terrible, the kills were terrible, the bad guy was terrible, the plot was terrible. The fact that it's supposed to be like Friday the 13th, it completely failed because there's no gore, there's no good practical effects, there's no tits and ass, there's no chase sequence that's really scary, there's no like final confrontation between Jason and like a final girl. There's just so many elements that there's no suspense ever, because this killer just lets these people stay at a lodge for a whole weekend. He doesn't kill anyone practically until there's like 10 minutes of the movie left. And it's just like, this movie, even for being a Friday the 13th ripoff, it just fails to recapture anything that would make for a good Friday the 13th movie. It is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Which, to be honest, whatever. You know, like, I can't wait to review their next one, Shocktopus. I can't wait to review others. Like, I wanna seek out these trashy indie movies and review them for what they are, and also give like constructive feedback, which I thought that I did the whole entire time. You know, like when I said this movie is trash, and that was trash and everything was trash. I thought that was very constructive, because if something is trash, then that means that you throw it in the trash and you think of something better. Okay? So in terms of food, I would give this movie a burned hot dog and a piece of white bread. That's what this movie is like. Like, it's very simple, but you can understand. Like, usually when you camp, when you go camping, you eat hot dogs. That's one of the cliche foods. And, well, this movie, it didn't give you that experience after it lied to you. It's straight up, this movie lies to you. And they tell you that this movie is about unsuspecting campers being killed at a summer camp. And that never happens in the movie. It's shameful. So this piece of shit is burned hot dogs and white bread. Complete trash. And I wouldn't have expected anything more, to be honest. But if it was good, I would have said it was good. Okay, so please like this video and comment. Tell me what you thought of You're All Doomed. The title's stupid too, by the way, because they're clearly just trying to signal to people that this is a Friday the 13th ripoff, because there's no other reason why that would be the title. They could have called this movie Terror at Camp Hollow, because that's what the camp was called before it was, set to be demolished. They could have called it The Return of Crispy. They could have called it Crispy's Revenge. Like, they could have called it so many things. But they noticeably chose to call it You're All Doomed, because they wanted people like me who are familiar with Friday the 13th to associate this movie with that. To be honest, like with the Dummy movie, I didn't really think there was that much of a case for like a lawsuit, but I think that with this movie there is kind of a case for a lawsuit. I think that there is, at least to the point of where, like, the filmmakers wouldn't do something like this again. Because it's like, how lazy can you be? Instead of, like, trying to make something on your own good, on your own merit, you make something to purposefully ride off of the coattails of a franchise and with people that you're not even associated with. I think it's shameful. It's really shameful and embarrassing and shitty. Okay, so also please subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see more honest movie reviews. And lastly, if you would like to support this channel even further, please check out our Patreon page, where you can get access to a ton of exclusive bonus content. And also my short film, County Fear, which I'll accept criticism for that. I've already accepted some. There was some criticism I got that was bad faith criticism, but like for the large part of it, like I pretty much knew like a lot of the stuff that went wrong before I even released it. And so, but it is what it is. Like, check it out. It's also on Fossum, streaming now. So, yeah, thank you everybody for watching, and that's it. Goodbye, everybody. See you soon.